From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report in Special English. Today, schools in the United States communicate with parents in many different ways. Mail is still used, but now schools and parents connect through email, Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr, and Skype. The Houston Independent School District in Texas has more than 200,000 students. Most of them come from lower-income families. The newspaper Education Week recently reported on a digital literacy training program that the district has started for parents. Microsoft helped the school district establish computer training centers for parents at 5 of its campuses. Other schools around the country are also increasing their digital services, and not just in English. Many schools provide information in Spanish and other languages. Free online translation sites can also help parents stay informed about their children's education. Some school systems even give parents online access to their children's grades and schoolwork. 600 students attend Knapp Elementary School near Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Joe Mazza is head of the school. He says nearly 1 in 5 of his students come from Bangladesh, and 12% come from South Korea. Joe Mazza says the most important way that a school gets to know parents is in face-to-face meetings. But under his guidance, the school has added social networking tools to meet the needs of the community. The school uses resources like Twitter, e-newsletters, and Skype. Teachers can talk to parents over Skype if the parents cannot attend a conference in person. Social media, Joe Mazza says, is providing us with many new and really free ways to connect with parents. For VOA Learning English, I'm Laurel Bowman.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report in Special English. Speaking Kurdish was a crime in Turkey until about 20 years ago. More recently, the government has eased some of its restrictions on the use of the language. Now, the government is letting some schools offer Kurdish language classes. Halil Chechen teaches beginning Kurdish to medical students at Dicala University in southeastern Turkey. He says people are happy about the changes that are now being put into place. But he says people have been waiting a long time, 50 or 60 years. One student says he welcomes the classes. He speaks only a little Kurdish, he says, and he sees the classes as a big step, but they are only the beginning. He thinks learning Kurdish should be required, especially in health education. He says it would be even more successful if Kurdish were taught starting at a young age. The university is in the mostly Kurdish city of Diyarbakir. It is not far from the border with Syria. Syrian Kurds seized control of their region from Syrian government forces earlier this year. Now, children are learning Kurdish as a first language. Kurds in neighboring Iraq have had that right for years. But Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan recently rejected calls for Kurdish education in the mother tongue. He called it a terrorist demand of the Kurdish rebel group known as the PKK. The Prime Minister says there is no such thing as education in the mother tongue. He says the country's official language is Turkish. Kurdish politicians face increasing pressure if they violate language restrictions. But the Kurdish language and culture are increasingly making their presence felt. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Silverman. This is the VOA Special English Education Report. More than 40 of the 50 American states have approved what are known as the Common Core State Standards. These are lists of content that students are supposed to learn at each grade level from kindergarten to high school. State governors and schools' chiefs led the effort to develop the standards. The project involved teachers, administrators, experts, and public comments. The final standards were released in June of 2010. Acceptance is voluntary, but acceptance helped states that entered President Obama's $4 billion Race to the Top competition for school reform. The standards are for English language arts and math. Supporters say these provide clear goals to prepare students to succeed in college and in jobs. But critics of national standards say the idea goes against one of America's oldest traditions, local control of education. Political conservatives generally oppose federal intervention in schools. Yet it was a Republican President, George W. Bush, who expanded testing requirements to show that public schools are making yearly progress. Still, opponents of national standards call them one-size-fits-all. They say the idea does not make sense for a country as large and diverse as the United States. One of those opponents is Bill Evers at the Hoover Institution at Stanford University in California. He was an assistant education secretary under President Bush. Mr. Evers warns about closing the door on innovation by locking in a national uniform bureaucratic system. He says the states don't have a problem in setting their curriculum. They've been doing it ever since there have been public schools. Richard Riley was Education Secretary to President Bill Clinton, a Democrat. Mr. Riley says conservatives would be concerned if we had federal mandated Common Core standards. That's not what we have. It's a state-driven measure. High standards, challenging work for young people across the country. Mr. Riley says in the 1990s, he pushed states to develop their own statewide standards. But some of those standards were not very strong, he says, so he believes national standards are needed. But Bill Evers says technology now makes it easier to develop individual learning plans for students. He says schools should worry less about a common curriculum and more about improving teacher quality. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. You can find a link to the Common Core Standards at voaspecialenglish.com.
This is the VOA Special English Education Report. Some schools in the United States and other countries offer Chinese language classes with government support from China. St. Mary's School is a private